Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Metroid Prime Remastered. In the last part, we found ourselves in the deepest reaches for now of the Phazon Mines and got ourselves the Power Bomb and Grapple Beam. And now we're back at the entrance of Phazon Mines to leave this place behind for a good while, because while there's still more for us to do here, we can't access that until we at least have the next major pickup, which technically could be a pretty fast process if you're just going to get that and then coming back here. But there's a lot of power-ups that we can get now that we have both the Grapple Beam and the Power Bomb, so we're going to be spending some time gathering those first. It does kind of get into a minor annoying thing about Phazon Mines that is similar to Phendrana Drifts in one regard. I mentioned several parts ago that Phendrana can only be accessed by Magmore Caverns. Phazon Mines has two entrances, one in the front, which is the Talon Overworld one, and then one in the back. But the back entrance, well, you can access it now that you have power bombs. You can't really reach anything from there besides maybe just getting back towards where we got the power bombs a little more quickly and through a much more roundabout way that's just not worth it in my eyes with the amount of items that there are to get on from the front even of Phazon Mines again. It's just going to be more worth it to go from there. And now we can actually use this boost ball spinner to actually open up that gate. And that brings us to an area we could have accessed for a while now. You might remember when we got the ice beam, I said there was another elevator to Talon Overworld right over there, besides the one we took to get towards where the crashed frigate is. That would bring you right around here, where we have raindrops hitting nothing. An invisible platform. Now, I like that platform because you can actually find that relatively early again. You can find that as soon as you get the ice beam, just about. But you're not able to actually get the item that allows us to see that platform until you get the power bomb. That's actually the main reason we're up here. And that requires climbing this spider ball track. Again, I'll give my credit to Prime 2 where it's due. The basic structure of that game's world, I think, is better suited for backtracking between levels. Unfortunately, some of the stuff with Dark Aether makes that a little harder to get into, and then there's problems with Prime 3 in that regard as well because of how separated the worlds are. And it honestly makes me wonder what structure Prime 4 is going to take. Because that game could easily take the structure of allowing you to go anywhere at any point in time closer to this, or it could take more of a Prime 3 structure, and I'm really curious on which it's going to be. So here we actually have a little bit of a slightly cleverly disguised half-pipe, and you only really need to use this to access the room on the right. But we want to get on top of this rock because there is a missile tank inside of it that you can hear, but you can only access by bombing it from the top. Make sure you have at least one power bomb when you come this direction, obviously, like I mentioned in the last part, because you needed to power bomb that thing to get into this section to begin with. Thankfully, even though we need another power bomb coming up, they do actively place a respawning enemy that gives power bomb drops 100% of the time. And here we have a new power-up, and by the looks, it's a visor. Here is the X-ray visor. You activate this by pressing left on the D-pad. This allows you to see not only objects that are hidden and invisible, like the invisible platform we stood on a few moments ago, but it also allows you to see through stuff that is otherwise impossible to see through. Like, if we look here, we can see through these walls. There's not exactly a scan prompt in here to figure this out, but between that and the fact that enemy that we just killed respawns infinitely and drops power bombs, you need power bombs to break them. And I didn't need to use a power bomb to break that little platform there, but if you put a normal bomb there, this little tower pops up with a boost ball spinner, and using that unlocks ourselves an artifact. You might as well grab this while you're here, because this section of Talon Overworld is really out of the way. Like, the fastest way to get back here otherwise is either going to that section deep in Chozo Ruins, or just taking the really long roundabout route to get here yourself. I do find it kind of interesting that the item completion kind of actually tracks alongside with the amount of parts this LP is, where I think we get 2/3 this point, and we're just over 2/3 through the LP. Be careful in this room on the way out, though, because we actually do need to take a little bit of roundabout route along the edges here to escape. But when you get to the platforms on the far side, don't try to jump over to the other one, because you'll just fall and have to redo that quick little portion we just did. because we got more Chozo ghosts. And now that we have the X-ray scope, we can see them at all times. Oh, God, ruining my immersion! Yeah, the X-ray scope allows you to see and target Chozo ghosts at all times, even when they're moving from one section to another. They're no longer invulnerable to your attacks for small periods of time. The annoying thing is this battle plays a cutscene both before and after it starts, and if you're jumping in the middle of that, you're just gonna fall straight back down to the ground, like I'm about to right now. Plop. Now I have to go all the way back up there. Oh no, the tedium. Just jump cut back up here. So now that we have that artifact in the X-ray scope, we're actually completely done in this sector of Talon Overworld. There's still a couple of items to get here, but most of those are gonna have to wait until we get the next power-up. I actually misspoke the last part. There are 3 major power-ups left in the game, counting the X-ray scope, but I don't really count the X-ray scope overall, because I think you can use the platforms that are there without seeing them. You just have to kind of figure out where they are ahead of time. The main reason I think you need it is because it's required for something towards endgame. It's not an optional power-up, unfortunately. At least I don't think it is. Maybe speedrunners can. I know there's a lot of things speedrunners used to be able to do that aren't possible in later versions, like something I forgot to mention during the fight against Thardus. Apparently there was a way with the space jump boots to scan dash around that arena before the fight kicks in and just get to the door or something, which I find kind of funny. So now I finally scanned that elevator, so we're actually heading back to where we found the ice beam just about here in the Chozo ruins. And we're going to take this opportunity to really get a lot of the items here in Chozo, because I think at this visit, there's only one item we can't get, and it's because we require the next beam for it. But I think by and large, everything else can be grabbed at this point. I forget to grab one of those things, as I mentioned earlier, and that's at the area where we got the charge beam. You can get that item that I haven't grabbed as soon as you get the gravity suit. But I'll get it down the line, because I'm going to need to come back to this area anyway. Speaking of which, here we are. And we got more Chozo ghosts. I guess now that I think about it, I didn't really realize now that I think about it. The Chozo ghosts we fought a few minutes ago, I think are the only Chozo ghosts that you don't fight in Chozo Ruins. Because I don't think they ever show up in any of the other areas besides that one. I think what gets just kind of tedious about the Chozo ghosts, though, is that they're in so many key rooms you're going to be navigating through for other stuff. And even if you can just ignore them to get to the next room, some of the other rooms they show up and you're going to need to kill them anyway just so they don't get in your way trying to get some items or something. And it's just really annoying. If there's any improvement Prime 3 has over 1 and 2, it's that I don't think it has an enemy type like this, and I'm really glad about that. The Commandos and Dark Commandos in Prime 2 are definitely the closest thing we got to this in that one. And I might as well use the missile recharge since I'm here. So I could theoretically save on doing this until later, but since I'm here in the Hall of Elders anyway, I do want to go unlock another one of those Morph Ball slots now that we have the Ice Beam and see what reward we can get for that. Again, I could just wait until I have the 3rd beam, but yeah. And hey, I finally remembered to scan the Morph Ball slots. You can tell at this point I had actually looked in my logbook to see what I was missing. Does that mean I'll scan the gunship soon? Ooh, who knows? Maybe. Maybe it's just a taunt. Maybe I'm lying. Maybe I get 99% just to mess with you all. Ooh. This little extended revisit to regions we're going to do here as well kind of goes on to partially explain why I really wish you could get the grapple beam earlier in the game. Because with where it's placed now, there's so many items we can grab, but a lot of them probably could have been gotten along the way otherwise if we had the grapple beam like around the time we got the spider ball instead of when we actually have gotten it now. Yeah, sure, in some of the rooms where I have to use the grapple beam anyway, I have to use power bombs as well. So I guess in that regard it saves us a trip, but I really think they could have picked a better pacing for that. And that's actually something I really do like about Prime 2 and 3. I think they do a better job pacing out their upgrades, even though some of the upgrades are also weirder. Prime 3 in specific removes some of the usual pickups and has you have them by default in lieu of making a lot of original things that just aren't as interesting. But that's also because that game has the entire hyper mode mechanic that they're focusing on and all that. It's complicated. Prime 2 gets things pretty good. If only some of the boss fights to get some of them weren't so annoying. I'm looking at you, Boost and Spider Guardian. So you might can see it right now while we have the X-ray scope on. There's a giant pit right here that we can now destroy that we have power bombs to reveal a hidden half-pipe, which means we can finally use the spider ball tracks we've seen in this furnace as early as, like, I think part 5 or 6 or something like that. Around the time we beat Thardus, either way. And I actually think I do a jump cut here because I take a little too long trying to get this particular half-pipe to work. I don't know why. Something about this camera angle in specific just makes it really hard for me to use. It's weird. Now, the slightly underwhelming thing is, this gigantic spider ball track we've seen for so long, and goes on for a little bit, is just for missile expansion. It's not for, like, a power bomb upgrade, it's not for an energy tank, it's kind of just there. And yeah, there are power bomb upgrades, I should note that. There's not many of them, though, compared to, say, Fusion or Zero Mission. If anything, I'd say overall, for the amount of times you need to use it, Prime 1 and 2 have the most appropriate amount of power bombs in the series? And you know what? Glad that someone figured that out, because admittedly that's even a problem. Dread still has too many power bombs for the point in the game you get them. Helps that in Dread especially, basically every power bomb pickup is locked behind a power bomb usage in most cases. There's a couple you can trick out, like I know there's one I think in, I don't remember which area it is, it might be Artaria for all I remember, that you can like do a diagonal shine spark to get to and all that. That's also something I'm kind of surprised about. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here as well. The speed booster never makes an appearance in Prime. Maybe it will in Prime 4 and I'm just dating myself here massively. But I feel like a speed booster could work well in Prime, especially if it's just like a movement speed increase rather than like a charge forward or something. Also, if you were going to go get that item in the area that I got the charge beam at, that I currently am forgetting to grab, that was the best moment to get it right then. But again, we're going to have to go back to the Hall of Elders eventually anyway, so it's not saving me that much time. Okay, now that we're back here, I think this is the fountain. There's a couple of items we can get here that we've been seeing for a while. We can ride that fountain that got cleared up by Flagara's death, to ride this spider ball track to find our way to a missile tank you would have been able to see as early as part 2 or 3. It is interesting kind of thinking about it. Like, I think I brought it up slightly. Even when we were first here in Chozo Ruins. You get a lot of the power-ups you started the game with back at a very good pace early on, but then, because of the amount of areas that you start exploring, there's a lot more time between major pickups, and you're mostly picking up just minor expansions. And I find that pacing honestly kind of satisfying, if a little bit weird at some points. And also in this room, we have our first power bomb expansion, which increases the amount of power bombs you can carry up to by 1. There are a total of 4 of these for a maximum of 8 power bombs. We also here have the final Chozo lore. The power of our temple and the 12 artifacts has sealed an evil in the depths of this planet. However, the future is cloudy to us, a world of veils where dark apparitions flit into shadows. Within this strange world, one image stands out in the mist, flickering through the landscape, wraith-like. It is a human, a lone figure shining in the toxic shadows. We Chozo do not know what it is, but our hearts swell with hope at the promise of that glowing light. We will place our faith in our shrine. We will be there when the light shines upon our land. If you've done everything I have throughout this LP, you should have every single Chozo lore at this point. And I think you should have all but like 1 or 2 pirate datas as well. There's only a couple in the deeper portions of Phazon Mines left. Barring you potentially not going to the impact crater to get the Artifact of Truth yet, because there's that pirate data over there. They're really picky on when they use cutscenes to introduce the Chozo ghosts, and I don't get why. So this whole chain of rooms, you've been able to access this for a while, but you need both the Various Suit and the Grapple Beam to even get over into it properly. And it just goes to show that, man, they really placed the Grapple Beam weirdly. And this is worth it too, because you only get a power bomb and its missile, as we've already seen, but we're going to be getting an energy tank here as well, and today, the more of those you get, the better. Even though there's only 3 left in the game, every health up is worth it, because the final boss, and I guess final boss is actually the last 3, all do some pretty hefty damage. And if you're playing the original versions of Metroid Prime, and I think even the trilogy releases, there's a certain trick you might want every energy tank in the game to do that is no longer possible here in Remastered, rather, that I'll talk about in 2 parts, maybe. I forget exactly the pacing of the next couple parts, barring the finale. I remember, though, when I finally got far enough in the game to get to this room, which took a while. I get through Metroid games pretty quickly now, but especially Prime, I was really poor about exploring about and figure out where to go as a kid. And I did several restarts just to be like, okay, I'm stuck now, time to replay the portions I wasn't stuck on, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Getting through this section was really rewarding to me because I was finally able to access a missile tank that you can see as early as the very start of part 2, I believe, of this LP. But there's no way to get because of collision and jumping hitboxes. There might be a way in the original, like, first 2 revisions of the GameCube release to maybe get this. Because of some tricky jump or branch you're not supposed to be able to jump on, but here in Remastered, you can't get it early at all. Just be careful of these pressers, because as you can see, they damage you, although a lot less than for some reason they do in my memory. Now that we have the grapple beam, we can come over here, swing across here in the very, not the first room, the second room of the Chozo Ruins, and get that missile expansion. Yay! Also, if for some reason you haven't, you can take this opportunity to go get the Wave Buster and all those things, but I already have. And here I'm being decisive on where I need to go. I need to go this way. In fact, it's time for some more speed up. Our next destination is in the Magmore Caverns. Both for some item pickups along the way and our next major pickup, so we're just gonna speed through these good old familiar portions towards where the Hive Totem was and make our way there. In particular, the first room we need to make a stop in at the Magmore Caverns is, what's the name of it? I actually don't remember the name of it. It's the room where you can see the puffers for the second time. And now there's flying pirates there, I believe, because now that we have the X-ray scope, we can see some platforms that are technically always there, you just can't really know where they are. Let's see, coming up right about here. Oh, and yeah, now that we have the grapple beam, we can actually, you know, use all the grapple points we've seen through here. Shut up, low battery. That does get fixed as the next part, by the way, because between this session and the next one, I ended up charging my controller. So yeah, now you can get to these platforms. Again, I think these are always here. You can just land on them. You just need to know they're there, and we can use a super missile to break open that and miss the jump completely for that missile tank. God damn it. So yeah, I believe if you can use these platforms earlier without the X-ray scope, I just don't trust my knowledge of where they are to be accurate. You at the most just need the super missile to get these because you'll have the space jump boots by then anyway. It's just a matter of knowing where to jump. So now that we got that, our next goal here is one we saw, I think, as early as just after we beat Thardus. You might remember on that side of Magmore Caverns, there was a, what's it called? A giant room with some weird circular platforms high up in the air that there's a grapple point if you look around. That's our next actual destination. There are a couple of item pickups along the way we're gonna grab. In particular, if memory serves, I do this now. We want to head back towards where I found our second artifact at the top of this room. Because I scanned it back then, but you might remember, there's a Bendesium thing in there we can destroy now that we have power bombs, so we might as well go grab whatever's behind that. On top of that, while we're actually in this direction, I think I may have scanned something else earlier on, but there's a certain Metroid tradition that we need to do in this area. More on that in a moment. The slightly annoying thing about going out of the way to do this artifact early is you do actually have to do the boost ball spinner every time you want to go over to this room. It's a very minor inconvenience, but it's like I would rather this platform just kind of stay up. But maybe that's kind of a weird thing to flag in specific and spend some time trying to code. I don't know. I may have started college in game design, but I didn't finish it in game design. I focus on the graphics and the video editing. Alright, so now we're in here. Pop a good old power bomb. We can destroy this little plate right there. Roll on down and we can find ourselves another power bomb expansion. That's actually the only power bomb expansion in Magmore. Same with the one we got in Chozo Ruins. The other two are both in Phendrana, which we'll be visiting, I think, next parts, if memory serves. So before we head towards where we got from Thardus, we want to come back here, and if we scan this, Bendesium frame in a tube. Everyone loves recreating that scene in Meridia. where we get the ice spreader. I think I actually skipped that cutscene there a little bit accidentally. The ice spreader is the super missile combo for the ice beam. And it's a lot more useful than the wave buster because it's a one-and-done shot that works like the super missile. You fire forward a gigantic ice spreader and it freezes enemies on contact and does high damage. With that said, like the wave buster, its power does come at a cost. It costs 10 missiles to fire this thing once versus the super missile's 5. So if you want to use this thing a lot, if you're in areas like this and just want to go ham with it, make sure you have a missile stock to supply it. And at this point, if you've been following this LP, you pretty much already do. You should have at a minimum 180, a maximum at least 185 missiles if you've been following me by the note. So you got at least 18 uses of that, which is pretty good. So this room is where we need to go. Now that we have the grapple beam, we can actually come over here and get onto this platform, which will start off this entire little, not side quest, this is mandatory, but this whole process of getting this room prepped. We need to use little boost ball spinners in each of these platforms to progress. Like I mentioned, oh, I love this music shift. Like I mentioned several parts ago, you could technically get this power up early in some versions of the game. Even in this version, because there's a little trick you could do that's like a double bomb jump into a space jump from unfurling your morph ball a specific way that allows you to reach the lowest of these 3 platforms in order to start the process of getting up here. With that said, that trick is kind of a one and done, because if you boost ball up the first of these platforms, then miss a jump from there, you have to reset your save file because you're not getting up there early again. Kind of annoying, but oh well, plus there's some other little safeguards they did to make that trick harder to do in later versions. Because our goal is that ice beam door covered with stuff over there. So you need the power bomb to get to that. With that said, I think in some of the earlier GameCube versions, that door was not covered in power bomb blocks. They just added those in later versions to force you to have to get the power bomb, I believe. Because I think, and you'll notice this when we get there a little bit later, but there's a small platform in front of that door that doesn't spawn in visually until you actually approach it from this angle. But it's always there, so you can stand on an invisible platform there. But yeah, we got a gigantic spider ball mess of platforms to get through. And if you're playing Trilogy or Remastered, take advantage of the fact you have the spring ball here with the X button, just to make this a little bit easier in your soul, so you don't have to, say, destroy blocks temporarily or have a bomb send you off slightly to the side and mess things up. It is kind of fun controlling the spider ball in full 3 dimensions, though, rather than having to be forced to go 1 or 2 directions in the sections where all the little fire parasites are. Kind of makes me wish they had more moments like that, because that's the closest it gets to being the spider ball from the original Metroid 2, in a way. Because when you're like this, it kind of controls similarly to Knights, almost, but it just feels like it's a wasted opportunity. And while we need to do this for story anyway, this is one of my favorite items we're getting in the game coming up here. Also, use a power bomb here instead of landing down on that rubble and trying to roll, because it's very easy for you to just fall off in the wrong direction. You have to go through the entire spider ball trek segment again. The Plasma Beam, the strongest individual normal beam in the game. I compared the power beam to a pistol and the ice beam to a shotgun. The Plasma Beam is the sniper rifle. One shot, very slow rate of fire, but high power to the point where it's charge shots enough to kill most enemies in the game in 1 to 2 shots, especially like the flying pirates, 1 shot no problem. And this also allows us to open red doors, even though we actually haven't seen too many of those in the game so far. I think there's not many to begin with, though. You could see maybe 1 in Talon Overworld, and 1 in, I guess, the Morph Ball slot over at the Hall of the Elder. And there's also 1, if you explore the furthest reaches, in the Phazon Mines. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 12, we're going to be returning to Phendrana Drifts to take care of some cleanup over there before heading on towards plot again. See you guys then.